You're welcome to yet another enlightening episode of Wellbeing here on AG4 TV Radio. I am ANTHONIETA, KALUNTA. Mental health problems is said to affect 1 in 10 children and young persons, but the level of awareness is still very poor, and it begs for the question, why? Joining us on this episode to examine the level of awareness children have on mental health is a woman who has saddled herself with the responsibility of making sure young persons and children are aware of their mental health. She is Tessy Egonu, who is a lawyer and the founder of the Quintrepreneur Women's Foundation. It's such a delight to have you join us.
Thank you, Antonia.
Thank you. You look dashing.
You too, you look really good.
Okay, so I've been waiting for this particular episode because we've had series of episodes that had to do with mental health. But for this particular one, we want to look at children. And I feel the basic thing, I've heard so many, on this particular program, we've heard so many definitions of mental health. So when dealing with children, I think it might be different. So I'd just like to ask, what is mental health?
Okay, mental health it's a disorder, and it's not something that you cause for yourself. You know, like a lot of people will say, why are you sad? I mean, why are you depressed? It's like asking somebody why you have cancer or why you have malaria. So it's a mental health is a disorder that affects the behavior of a person. It can make you sad, detached, antisocial. It just depends. And also there are different types of mental health. We have the depression. We always focus on depression, but there are lots of different types of mental health issues. We have anxiety disorder, which is like the most common kind of mental health issue a lot of people face. A lot of people face anxiety disorder. That's where it keeps you in a position where you're always overthinking things. It makes you very shy to approach people. It causes heart palpitations when you're on stage or when you're about to do something. It also makes you detached, and that's the most common one people find themselves facing, while depression is another type of mental health disorder. So mental health disorder is just basically a sickness of the brain, a sickness of the brain. Just like we have the sickness of the body. The sickness of the brain.
We've had various definitions of mental health on this particular program, but since we're looking at children now, I'd like to know, what is mental health? What is the definition you would give to children for them to understand what mental health as well-being now is?
Okay, first of all, I'll break it down for them. Mental has to do with the brain. Health, like we all know, has to do with your well-being. How okay are you? Your body, how good are you? So when we're talking mental health, we're talking about your brain well-being. So if I were to explain to a child what mental health is, I'll tell them mental health has to do with how healthy your brain is, your thinking, your decision making, the factors that surround your brain, how healthy is that? That's how I would break it down to explain to a child.
So for us to be looking at mental health awareness for children, it means that because there's mental health awareness every day, but to break it down for children, what makes the situation of children peculiar? What makes us want to look at children?
Okay, because mental health issues obviously most times starts from hereditary, so it means you already had it in you while growing up. People feel it just happens when you're older. No, it already starts as a child. And for kids, they are easily misunderstood and they don't get to know what we already know right now. So you can imagine how difficult it is for a young child to be facing mental health issues, but not even knowing that they are facing mental health issues. And what's even worse is that the adults around them wouldn't even understand that this child is going through this. Like, we can talk, we can say, oh, something is wrong with me. They don't even know anything is wrong with them. So they have to deal with the fact that something is wrong with them, and then adults not even being encouraging and supportive enough to understand that this child has a peculiar situation. That is why it's more important for us to start to focus on mental health for children right now.
Right now.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. But when carrying out mental health awareness now for children, how does one go about it?
Okay, for me, because it's still a field I'm just finding myself in, I think when it comes to young children, especially children below the age of 13 and down, it's a very sensitive issue to tell a young child just by observing them, oh, you have a mental health issue. You don't want them to start overanalyzing things and
wondering
maybe,
and
then start dwelling so much on it. Better still, maybe how I go about it is observation. Because sometimes some children have certain behaviors that aren't mental health issues. So you can't just, because I'm not a doctor, so basically it's to observe a child's behavior, understand why they are different, and then find ways to get along with them. Obviously, if someone is suffering from, let's say, anxiety disorder, you see that they are very shy and detached. They don't open up and talk a lot in public. They don't like to focus on them. And then I think they overthink things. So everything you tell them, they go back and rethink and rethink and rethink. They analyze situations. So imagine a child going through that. So when you're observing a child is like that, from the way they talk, from the way they behave, you can know if a child is suffering from anxiety disorder. Most times they wouldn't want to talk. They wouldn't want to talk in public because they don't want to, and they don't want to offend people most of the time, people with anxiety disorder, yeah. So you notice a child that way. If you want to work with a child with anxiety disorder, don't put them on the spot. You don't tell them, oh, you have anxiety disorder, but you find a way to work with them. Don't put them on the spot. Don't say hurtful or meaningful things to them. If they're not ready to talk in public, don't force them. Don't tell them things like, oh, your mates are doing it. Do they have two heads? Things like that. You can really even make it worse for them. So yeah, so it's just basically about observations. Then there are kids also who already have depression. As we know, depression is not something that is caused by lack of money or lack of food. Some people have it already as a sickness, because if it's based on money, why are rich people committing suicide based on depression? So it's a sickness and it can be hereditary. So you see these kids sad. They don't socialize with people. They don't, maybe after school, they just want to go home. And if the parents are observing, they lock themselves away from the regular things in life. They don't want to eat. And they have weeks where you go without talking to anyone in the house. These are small kids, and they don't even know what they are facing. They're just feeling that way. So I think as we adults, we need to observe children around us and see what's so unique and different about them before we start concluding about who they are or what they do. So you can find ways to work with them. So when you see children that have unique behaviors, and obviously we know that mental health actually affects their success
disorders.
Yeah, they affect their success in school. So you see a child coming home and the child is failing, and then you're pushing so hard on the child, comparing the child to other children. It's hard for kids. I mean, they don't even understand why they are failing. You can see, I know a lot of children are putting so much work into their education, and still something is wrong. You have to understand what is missing. Sometimes it might not, whatever they're doing might not just be for them. But sometimes it might be mental health issues you're facing, and they don't even know they're facing this, and then they have to still face home. They can't even explain what's going on. So I think it's really important that right now mental health awareness should be focused on children, because as adults we can talk. But as children, a lot of kids are very misunderstood. Recently on Twitter, I saw someone saying his 12-year-old cousin committed suicide. How did a 12-year-old commit suicide?
Get to the point where he decided
to commit suicide. So, and a friend of mine also told me about a child who killed himself because he failed. So, I mean, it might not just be his grades that made him kill himself. He's already going through something. And then he knows that if he carries that home, it's going to be worse, because the parents don't even understand that he's going through something. They're just going to hammer on him. It's hard for these young children to live in an environment where everybody is just focused on the fact that we're the adults, we're the ones who provide the money, we're the ones to have the depression.
Most people believe children don't really have problems. Just play, go to school, read your books.
And that's where the problem itself is, because when you already feel like children don't have problems, even when they want to tell you they have something wrong with them, you just shut them out. When a child is telling you, I know growing up sometimes when you're sad and they say, why are you sad? You have children at home that you want to feed, and you just it's hard. So imagine what kids are going through, and they don't even understand what they're going through first of all. So
for many people, the question will now be, okay, teach children about mental health awareness, but what is the impact generally? What would you say in your work with kids and your work so far? What would you say is the impact mental health awareness for children will have on society? Okay,
yes. So it's going to first of all boost self-confidence, especially with kids who have been observed and noticed that, okay, there's something different about them. Their success in school is going to improve, because now you're going to deal with them differently. You're not going to deal with them like the general crowd. You're going to focus on them separately, teach them based on their pace, on their understanding. And then also, when you create this mental health awareness, also for children themselves, it gives them the opportunity to speak out to their teachers, their friends, their peers, and say, okay, I feel something is wrong with me. These are the symptoms they spoke about the last time. I have it already, and I want to talk to someone about my problem. So it's going to change a whole lot.
So when you observe, how do you ascertain that this is a problem?
Okay, so when you observe, you know, you have to first, for you to know it's a problem is if it repeats itself continuously over and over again. Now, there are little outbursts kids have. We know it's just an outburst. But then there are repetitive patterns you see a child shows over time. Maybe the certain way when they get angry, it's the same over and over and over again. Or when they're shutting themselves out. It doesn't just happen once. It happens in short period. It continues to happen. Or when they are slow in school, education, it's not that, okay, at that moment something was wrong with them. Over and over. So you look at the repetitive patterns. And when you notice a pattern with your child, what you should do is take him to a hospital where they have this mental health check. And then there are questions I'm sure they could ask, things they could talk about with the child to now determine what kind of mental health disorder the child is suffering from. And once a parent realizes that, then you can now go and inform the teachers, the school authorities, so that this child can be focused on specially. Obviously, a lot of schools in Nigeria, I don't think have the facility for that now.
To care for special children.
Yeah, and that's why we need to create the awareness for children. I'm sure when we start creating this awareness, it will help a lot with them creating these facilities for children. And also, the worst part of the country that is being hit are the kids in underserved communities. So you can imagine, I mean, the teachers are not well paid. They don't even teach them very well enough. Then imagine having
they have more numbers
of children. So you can imagine how a lot of kids are being neglected in those areas. And right now, that's my primary focus on underserved communities. That's the place.
Okay. So are there some children who you believe are more prone to these mental health challenges than others? Polar answer, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll take a quick break now, and when we return, Tessy Egonu, who's a lawyer and the founder of the Quintrepreneur Women's Foundation, will give us more insight into the kinds of children or the children who are more prone to mental health challenges than others. Stay with us. You're welcome back from that quick break. This is Wellbeing, and on this episode we've been examining how to create more awareness on mental health for children. We've been joined by Tessy Egonu, who is a lawyer and the founder of the Quintrepreneur Women's Foundation. She has been giving us her own take on mental health awareness for children. And before we went on the break, Tessy, you were about to tell us the kinds of children, or the children, I don't like the word kinds, for children, or the children who are more prone to mental health challenges.
Yeah, there are children who are more prone to mental health challenges. Because the first factor, before we talk about hereditary, is environmental factors, such as where they grew up, emotional trauma, or physical trauma, what they witnessed as a kid. You know, kids that grew up in homes where they watched abusive father or abusive mother. And then we also have sexual harassment, if they were raped at a very young age. Even as early as 3, 4, it affects their mental health. There's a case of a woman who was an opera, who was raped as a child when she was 2, 3, 4, I think till she was 13, and then she ran away from home. That caused, she started being raped as a baby by her father. That alone caused her to have multiple personality disorder. So for her to be able to deal with the trauma she faced, her personality split into different. She had 80 different personalities. Yeah, so the personality that remembers was shut out, and she had another personality. And so it's little things that can bring one personality and another personality. So you can imagine how trauma can affect a child and how it can affect their growing up. And then also we have, I think that's basic, most of the factors, you know, the environment, how you grow up, things that happen during the time you're growing up, the people around you. These are one of those kind of kids suffer
from mental health challenges. Well, basically, in your work with children, what are the particular challenges? Now, carrying out awareness. I know teaching a child basics is always a little more challenging because of how they comprehend. So what are the challenges you've experienced so far in getting the message across?
Okay, the people we focus on, the awareness we're focusing on are the teachers and the parents. These are the main people who are to observe the kids. Because if we're just, obviously we need to let the children know that, okay, this exists, and you know the way you treat your peers matters. You don't know what you're going through and all that. So we teach them to be more empathetic towards others, and to also show care, acts of kindness, and you know consciousness to their fellow peers. And then the teachers, which we plan on starting next year, we want to train them every term, once every term, teach them about how to observe children, how to teach children to love, to care, to understand themselves. And then also the parents, you teach them how to observe their kids' mental health by just the little things the children do. We just teach them on these trainings. We're going to find experts in mental health issues who have webinars, and we also have group sessions. So we have schools we go to, we invite the parents to come for these programs. This can really help with the awareness for mental health for children. Yeah.
Well, basically, we understand that for every time you want to launch an awareness like this or put it out there, would be some factors that could be societal or, you know, because of the children themselves and the way they are wired. What are some of the things that may hinder or have hindered children from having the best level of awareness right now?
First of all, exposure. A lot of kids are not allowed to, apart from school. I think a lot of parents are very, how do I put it? Not careful, a bit. They don't want their kids to know anything more than just go to school and come back. So even if you want to start to do something where we want to create mental health awareness, a lot of parents will not want their kids to attend it because they choose what they want their kids to learn, which is a very big problem. So that is why we want these parents to understand that it's important for them to allow their kids to be exposed, to be able to meet people, mingle, and then build their self-confidence enough for them to talk and share what's going on with them. So that's one of the biggest challenges. The biggest challenge is the parents themselves, even allowing the children to come for such awareness campaign and programs. Because
to be fair, I feel on this other side, they're careful what
their kids are being taught and being told. They don't want their child to come back and say, this is what they told us. Like I said originally, it's a very sensitive issue when dealing with children. So it's more of the parents, the teachers, and then just teaching these kids that some people are special, they're different. That doesn't make them, it's just that they just needed to be treated differently. And you know, even if we start talking about difference, the basic thing every child should have is empathy and love. So you don't have to love someone because they're different. You should just love everyone the same way. And then you just know, for this whole idea of bullying a child, you know, you had kids, you know, you just have to teach these children just to show empathy and love to one another. So it can help with kids who are already suffering from things like this, not to deal with more issues already.
Okay, so at what point, I know you work with mental health therapists and those mentors you mentioned earlier, but you've not mentioned working with any specialist, like health specialist. So at what points do you think a specialist should come in? At what point should you now refer or hand over?
Yeah, good. So it's like from levels to levels. The mentors will first focus on the kids. During the mentoring programs, they observe children. And then when they notice there's something unique about a child, different, you know, and it's not the first time, it's obvious over time of mentoring, they say, okay, we need to draw the attention of the organization who is organizing this mentor that, okay, this child is unique, you know, observe the child. Then we start asking questions. We want to know, just allow the child to feel free, confident enough to talk to you, trust you to talk. It could be something going on at home. He or she could be sexually molested. So we want to know. When it has gotten to the point where we now know what is making this child different, then we can now bring in a therapist, because we don't handle it. We just observe. Ask questions and know what's wrong. For example, in the case of sexual molestation, which is causing a child to be detached and down and feel depressed, there's no how I can talk to a child who has been said, I don't know the right things to say or how to help to treat them and make them feel better. So a therapist, a specialized therapist will be involved.
Yeah. Now, what is your message to parents now? What should parents do? Because basically, not everyone would have access to you. So the parents at home, how should they, you've mentioned observation over and over again. And you know how parents generally these days get a little too busy for a lot of things. So what is your message to them? How should they handle these things to ensure that?
Okay, my message to parents is parents should be more involved with the activities of their children. First of all, they need to know what their child first likes, the passion. From the passion, knowing all these things about the child, you can now tell when they're different. For example, if you know your child loves music and all of a sudden they don't want to play music anymore, they don't want to hear music anymore, they've been avoiding play, something is obviously wrong. So you have to be more involved with your child. A lot of parents don't even know their children's passion, you know, so you can't even tell when they are now different because you've never really noticed anything about them. So you have to be involved, you know, their friends, you know, if you know the friends they hang around with and you realize, okay, my child does not talk to this friend anymore. It's been a while I've heard her mention this particular person's name. You have to know what's going on. It could be a situation of bullying. It could be a situation, you know, just anything. Just you have to observe, or it could just be, they just stop being friends. But if you are more involved in your child's life and the activities, then you can not even tell when something is different. Because no matter how you try to observe, there's no how you know anything different if you don't even know how your child behaves on the normal, the activities and what they do. So yeah, and then also if you're in situations of where you have a lot of relations as a parent living with you, I'm sorry to say, but you know we had a lot of parents stories of relations sexually molesting children. So you have to always make sure your child is bold enough to talk to you, you know, and all. My sister always tells her children, her kids, when you're going to school, anything happens, come back and tell me. If they play with you, just tell me. Anybody, you know, she from small, you know, from kindergarten now, the kids will come back home and they're gisting and talking about everything. So that's you being involved. So when you see your child, you know your child is always talking, and when you see there's a detached behavior from your child, that's when you start the observation, and then you want to know what's going on. So it's very important for parents to involve themselves in their child's life first, know what your child like, what they don't like, their friends, the things they love to do, just basic things, little things like this really helps in observing children.
So thank you so much. What are your final words on the importance of mental health awareness for children?
Okay. Mental health awareness is very important because we've said that our children are the leaders of tomorrow. For us to have leaders who are competent and who are good enough to rule, we have to understand how they grew up and how their society affected them. So the awareness is important so we can observe these children in order for them to build their self-confidence and also for them to succeed in academic life or whatever they find, or whatever passion they find themselves in. So it's important for us to start this mental health awareness campaign for kids because children are the ones who are actually suffering from this more than the adults themselves because they're actually misunderstood a lot. Kids don't have the ability to talk to adults the way we adults have the ability to talk to ourselves. That's why this campaign on awareness is important so that we can observe our children and make sure that they succeed in whatever area of life they choose.
Thank you so much. So whether for young or older persons, mental health is an important issue that every single person and society generally must pay attention to. It has been an insightful conversation with Tessy Egonu, who is a lawyer and the founder of Quintrepreneur Women's Foundation. Thank you for staying to the end of this episode. I am Anthonieta, KALUNTA. Bye for now.